My dear brothers and sisters, today we speak about one of the greatest challenges that humanity faces and one of the most dangerous traps that destroys not only individuals but entire families and nations. It is the disease of riba, or interest, that has become so normalized in our lives that many no longer see it as dangerous, even though it is a poison that eats away at the very soul of society. Riba is not just a financial transaction. It is not just about money changing hands. It is a system that enslaves, that dehumanizes, that takes the dignity away from people and makes them prisoners of debt. When we reflect deeply, we realize that it is not just about numbers in a bank account. It is about justice, mercy, compassion, and the values that Islam came to protect. Let us begin by understanding why Islam speaks so strongly against riba. In essence, riba is a form of exploitation. It is taking advantage of another human being's need. When someone is in difficulty, when someone is desperate, when someone needs support, riba steps in not to help, but to benefit at their expense. Instead of easing hardship, it multiplies it. Instead of providing relief, it adds another layer of suffering. And this is where the destruction begins. Imagine a family struggling to make ends meet. Perhaps a father loses his job, or a mother has medical expenses, or a student needs to pay fees. Instead of finding compassion and community, they are pushed toward borrowing with interest. The small amount they borrow turns into a mountain of debt. Month after month, payment after payment, their lives become chained to this debt. The stress begins to destroy their peace at home. The arguments increase. The love between husband and wife is tested. The children feel the weight of the tension. Suddenly, the family is no longer thinking about building a better future together, but about how to survive another month. This is how riba destroys families. It breaks down trust. It breaks down unity. It makes people feel like failures even though they are victims of a system designed to trap them. But it doesn't stop at the level of families. Riba destroys entire nations. Think about the global system today. Poor nations, many of them Muslim, are drowning in debt. Billions of dollars are owed to richer countries and institutions, and with every passing year the debt grows larger because of interest. These countries are forced to cut education budgets, healthcare, social services, just so they can pay the interest on their loan. Generations are left uneducated. Hospitals are left without medicine, all because of riba. Nations are kept weak, dependent, and humiliated. They cannot stand on their own feet because they are chained by debt. This is exactly why Islam warned so strongly against riba. It is not just a personal sin, it is a social crime. It is not just about an individual being greedy. It is about building an entire economy on exploitation, oppression, and injustice. And when injustice becomes the foundation of an economy, that economy will eventually collapse. We are seeing this around us today. Look at the financial crises that shake the world again and again. Banks collapse. Markets crash, millions lose their jobs, families lose their home. All of this because the system is built on riba, on loans, on interest, on artificial wealth that has no connection to real production, hard work, or fairness. My dear brothers and sisters, let us not think that this warning is just for economists and politicians. This warning is for me and you in our daily lives. Every time we choose riba, we are feeding into this system of oppression. Every time we sign an agreement that includes interest, we are agreeing to become part of the problem. And every time we avoid it, every time we choose patience, every time we choose to trust Allah instead of falling into this trap, we are freeing ourselves and building a better society. Now I want to pause here and remind us of something important. Islam is not a religion that just forbids without providing alternatives. Allah does not simply say, "Do not take riba," and leave us with nothing. No, Islam gives us solutions, ethical alternatives, and a system that is built on fairness. Think about zakat, about sadaqah, about qard hasan, a loan given without expecting anything in return, except reward from Allah. These are not just acts of charity, they are the foundations of a healthy society. When the rich support the poor without exploiting them, when businesses grow without crushing others, when wealth circulates instead of being concentrated, everyone benefits. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, taught us that the upper hand is better than the lower hand, meaning the one who gives is better than the one who begs. But how can the upper hand exist if we keep turning generosity into business, if we keep turning compassion into profit? Islam teaches us to lend without interest, to give without expecting more back, to help people so that they can stand on their own feet, not so that they remain under our feet. My dear brothers and sisters, think about this at the level of your own family. A brother comes to you in need. If you lend him with interest, you are taking advantage of his weakness. But if you lend him without interest, you have preserved his dignity, you have strengthened the bonds of family, and you have earned reward with Allah. This is how societies are meant to function, through mercy, through solidarity, through fairness. But today, we live in a culture where debt has become normal. Credit cards, student loans, mortgages, car loans, payday loans. Everywhere you turn, Riba is waiting. And the saddest part is that many Muslims have come to believe that it is impossible to live without it. But let us remind ourselves, impossible is a word for those who have forgotten who Allah is. When we rely on Allah, when we make sacrifices for His sake, when we trust that halal will bring more blessing than haram ever could, doors open that we never imagined. I have met families who chose to rent, instead of taking an interest-based mortgage, and even though they struggled at first, Allah blessed their lives in ways they could not have planned. I have met young people who refused to take student loans with interest, and instead Allah opened paths for them through scholarships, jobs, or community support. These are living examples that when you give up something for Allah, He replaces it with something far better. So my message today is simple. Riba destroys families. Riba destroys nations. But avoiding riba revives hearts, strengthens families, and empowers communities. And we must not only avoid it individually, but also speak against it collectively. We need to create more awareness, educate our children, and support Islamic alternatives in finance and business. We need to hold on to hope that our Ummah can rise again, not by copying a broken system, but by reviving the values that made us strong in the first place: justice, mercy, and honesty. My dear brothers and sisters, as we close, remember this: wealth does not determine success. A nation that is rich in riba is not truly rich. It is poor in the sight of Allah. And a family that avoids riba, even if they have less in the dunya, will have more in barakah, more in peace, and more in the akhirah. So let us choose wisely. Let us choose barakah over numbers, mercy over profit, dignity over exploitation. Let us raise our children to understand that true success comes not from drowning in loans, but from living with contentment and trust in Allah. And if today you feel trapped in riba, know that it is never too late to turn back. Repent sincerely, ask Allah for help, seek alternatives, and make a plan to escape this system step by step. Your intention and your effort matter more than anything else. May Allah protect our families from the trap of riba. May Allah protect our nations from being enslaved by debt. May Allah open the doors of halal for us and close the doors of haram. May He fill our lives with barakah, our hearts with contentment, and our ummah with justice and strength. When riba enters a home, peace begins to leave. What may look like a small decision, a small signature on a paper, a small agreement for what seems like an easy solution, eventually grows into something that can slowly eat away at the foundation of an entire family. It starts with one loan, it starts with one debt, but the effects do not stop there. The consequences ripple outward, touching the hearts of the husband, the wife, the children, even the extended family, until what was once a home of love and trust becomes a place filled with tension, fear, and constant worry. Think about how most families get trapped. A husband may say, "We just need this loan to get through the month." A mother may think, "If we take a little extra, we can pay for the children's education." Sometimes it begins with buying a car, sometimes a house, sometimes medical bills. At first, the family feels relieved. The money is there. The immediate stress is gone. They believe this will solve their problems. But as the months go by, the payments start coming in. The interest keeps increasing. The family realizes that no matter how much they pay, the amount does not seem to decrease. The relief that once felt so sweet turns into a bitter taste that will not go away. And soon the arguments begin. The husband feels the pressure of not being able to provide. The wife feels the burden of managing a household with constant bills and demands. The children watch their parents argue, and they absorb the stress even if they cannot fully understand it. What was once a home of laughter becomes a house of silence or shouting. What was once a place of safety becomes a place where everyone feels on edge. The warmth of the family bond starts to cool, not because they do not love each other, but because riba has stolen their peace. But the destruction is not only financial or emotional, it is also spiritual. A family that lives in debt and interest often begins to feel disconnected from Allah. Their hearts feel heavy, their du'as feel empty. They start to wonder why blessings seem absent from their lives. They may have a beautiful house but no tranquility. They may own nice cars but no happiness. They may buy expensive clothes but no contentment. This is the invisible poison of riba. It robs people of barakah, of the unseen blessings that make even the simplest life full of joy. And what about the children? They grow up in a home where money is always a source of stress. They hear their parents complain about debt. They see their family constantly struggling, and they internalize this anxiety. Instead of learning to live with gratitude and patience, they learn to live with fear and desperation. They grow up thinking debt is normal, that borrowing with interest is the only way to survive. And so the cycle continues into the next generation. What began as one loan has now become a generational curse, passed down like an inheritance of misery. My dear brothers and sisters, riba does not just destroy wallets, it destroys relationships. It does not just affect your bank account, it affects your marriage, your parenting, your mental health, and your spiritual state. When riba enters through the door, mercy exits through the window. When interest begins to shape a family's life, trust and tranquility slowly fade away. And the saddest part is that so many families think this is normal, that this is just life. But it is not life. It is a trap. Now imagine instead a family that refuses riba. They may have less on paper, but they have more in their hearts. They may live in a smaller home, but that home is full of warmth. They may drive an old car, but their journeys are filled with laughter. They may not have the latest clothes or gadgets, but their meals are full of gratitude. This is the difference between a home that is built on trust in Allah and a home that is built on debt. One is full of invisible barakah, the other is full of invisible poison, and we must ask ourselves honestly, is it worth it? Is the bigger house worth the constant argument? Is the new car worth the anxiety that never leaves? Is the appearance of success worth the destruction of peace inside our own homes? Families must realize that success is not measured by what we own, but by the love, mercy, and faith that fill our lives. Riba promises comfort but delivers misery. It promises progress but delivers chains. It promises happiness but delivers heartbreak. It is time we wake up to this reality. Protect your home by protecting your heart from riba. Protect your children by teaching them that debt is not a solution. It is a prison. Protect your marriage by choosing patience over loans, simplicity over extravagance, and trust in Allah over trust in a system that is designed to exploit. And if you are already trapped in it, do not despair. Do not think it is too late. Every step away from riba is a step closer to peace. Every small decision to avoid it, every sacrifice made for Allah's sake, brings new blessings into your life. Families who turn back to Allah, who repent sincerely, who look for halal alternatives, often find that their lives begin to open in ways they could never have imagined. Doors appear where before there were only walls. Relief comes where before there was only stress. We must remember that what makes a family strong is not the wealth they accumulate, but the love, faith, and trust they cultivate together. Riba is like a termite that eats away at the foundation of this strength, slowly and silently, until one day the house collapses. But when a family protects itself from riba, even if the walls are thin, the foundation remains strong, and no storm can bring it down. So let us commit to protecting our homes. Let us commit to raising children who know that true dignity is in contentment, not in showing off wealth that is borrowed. Let us commit to being husbands and wives who value peace over possessions, who value patience over pressure, who value barakah over numbers. Because at the end of the day, when we stand before Allah, He will not ask us how big our house was or how new our car was, but how much trust we had in Him, how much love we shared, how much mercy we lived with. Riba destroys families because it replaces mercy with money, trust with transactions, and love with loans. But families who resist it, who choose a simpler but purer life, discover a richness that no bank can ever offer, the richness of barakah, the richness of peace, the richness of a home that is loved by Allah. And that, my dear brothers and sisters, is worth far more than anything money can buy. A nation drowning in riba will never stand tall. Debt is not just a number on paper, it is a chain around the neck of an entire people. It is this silent weapon that turns leaders into followers, turns independent nations into beggars, and turns communities that were meant to inspire the world into communities that are struggling just to survive. When we look at the condition of so many countries today, we see this truth unfolding right in front of us. Nations that once stood with pride, nations that once built civilizations, nations that once led the world in knowledge, trade, and justice are now trapped in the endless cycle of borrowing and repaying, borrowing again and repaying more, sinking deeper every year into the pit of Riba. Think about how this cycle works. A nation faces financial hardship, maybe from war, corruption, or poverty. Instead of turning inward to build resilience, it turns outward to borrow. At first, the loan feels like a solution. There is relief, there is money to spend, projects begin, salaries are paid, but behind every loan lies interest, and behind every interest payment lies a trap. Because no matter how much is repaid, the debt never seems to go away. The more you pay, the more you owe. And so generations are born under the shadow of this burden. Children grow up in countries where their future is already mortgaged to institutions that profit from their suffering. This is why Islam warned us so strongly about riba. It is not only a private sin, it is a social disaster. It does not only harm the one who takes it, it cripples entire nations. It makes the strong weak, the proud humiliated, and the independent dependent. And when a nation is dependent, it cannot make its own decisions freely. Policies are dictated by creditors, economies are shaped by outsiders. Priorities shift from serving the people to serving the banks. The voice of the people is silenced under the weight of repayment schedules and interest demands. Look at the reality of so many countries today. Billions are borrowed, but where does that money go? Instead of building schools, it goes to interest. Instead of hospitals, it goes to interest. Instead of feeding the poor, it goes to interest. A cycle of exploitation is created where nations are kept weak, not because they lack resources, but because their resources are drained away before they can even be used for the people. Natural wealth, human talent, endless potential, all of it wasted because of the trap of riba. And this is not an accident, this is how the global system is designed. Riba is not simply an economic choice, it is a tool of control. It keeps nations dependent so they never rise, so they never stand tall, so they never reclaim their dignity. It is a system that feeds on desperation. It offers help with one hand and takes freedom with the other. It promises development, but it delivers humiliation. It promises growth, but it delivers slavery. As Muslims, we must see this reality with open eyes. We cannot think of riba as something small, as just another financial detail. No, it is a chain that weakens our entire ummah. While Islam calls us to dignity, to independence, to strength, riba reduces us to humiliation, to weakness, to dependence. And the saddest part is that many of us have accepted this as normal. We hear about national debts in billions and trillions and we shrug, as if this is simply the way the world works. But in truth, it is the very reason why our nations cannot rise to their potential. History teaches us that the greatest nations are not those who borrow the most, but those who live with integrity, fairness, and justice. A nation cannot truly prosper if its foundation is built on exploitation. And riba is the ultimate form of exploitation. It is taking without giving. It is profiting from the suffering of others. It is draining wealth without creating value. And when a nation embraces this system, it invites its own destruction. We must ask ourselves, how can we dream of being leaders of the world when our budgets are dictated by creditors? How can we speak of dignity when our nations are forced to sell their resources just to pay interest? How can we claim strength when our futures are mortgaged away? True strength cannot exist under the shadow of riba. True dignity cannot exist under the weight of debt. But there is hope. Just as riba can weaken a nation, rejecting riba can revive it. When nations begin to build on fairness, when they choose justice over exploitation, when they invest in their people instead of feeding the banks, they rise again. It requires courage, it requires sacrifice, and it requires trust in Allah. But the reward is independence, dignity, and real prosperity. We have examples even in our own history. When Muslims built their economies on trade, on honesty, on fairness, they became leaders of the world. They spread not only goods, but also trust. Their wealth was not just in gold and silver, but in values, and those values attracted hearts from across the world. That same spirit can be revived if we have the courage to say no to riba, to break free from this cycle of dependence, and to create alternatives that reflect the justice of Islam. And at the personal level, every step we take matters. When we choose to avoid riba in our own lives, we are not only protecting ourselves, we are weakening the grip of this system on our ummah. When we support Islamic alternatives, when we demand fairness in our businesses, when we teach our children that dignity is greater than debt, we are planting the seeds of a future where our nations stand tall again. Brothers and sisters, riba weakens nations because it strips them of their independence, their dignity, and their strength. It keeps them trapped in a cycle of humiliation. But if we want to rise again, if we want to reclaim our place as an ummah of justice and mercy, then we must begin by freeing ourselves from the chains of riba. Let us have the courage to choose differently, the faith to trust in Allah's promise, and the vision to build a future where our families and nations stand tall once again, not as slaves to debt, but as leaders in dignity and strength.